Claudia here from Euroblast in Cologne in Germany, and it's so proggy here. You should really check out this festival. And now it's time to talk to Sam. Thanks for being here, Caligula's horse.
Yeah. My pleasure, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, you know, we've been talking before the interview about what it's going to be like. So I'm more interested into the musical part.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
like how do you find out about which sound to use or which gear to use? Is there like a testing series you do every now and then?
Certainly. I mean, well, it depends. If we're talking about sort of writing songs, we always approach every album with kind of a bit of a theme that sort of precedes a lot of the composition. So, for example, within Contact with the last album, it was all about creating a greater sense of dynamic than the album before. It had to be louder, softer, denser, and sort of, more sparse at times. That's kind of more of an abstract question about the composition. When it comes to guitar sounds and things, it's really more about just making them work in the room. So I'm also a producer. That's one of the other things that I kind of do with my time and do for a job.
Like
so
everything else.
Exactly. Yeah, no, so exactly right. So I'm sort of approaching how the band sounds with a view of where the guitar fits in, rather than just how good can the guitar sound. Because of course you can get the best guitar sound ever, chuck it in with bass and drums, and suddenly it just sounds like mush. Like, it has to be right. So we actually spend a lot of our rehearsal time, or our kind of band meeting time, just workshopping those kind of things and making sure that Adrian's guitar slots in where it does, mine slots in where it does, the bass doesn't get in the way, they all occupy their own positions, and at the end of the day, hopefully that kind of translates the density of the album a little bit better. I don't know if that's exactly what you were getting at, but
yeah, sure.
but anyway,
Yeah, it's because the process of how to get your sound is always very different from band to band.
Definitely,
and it's an interesting process going on. Like also gear-wise, if you're deciding to have always the same amp, or you're saying no, I'm totally into testing, or that's.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for us, it was a long process. Like, for many years, it was like I had to use my valve amps. I had to have my cabs and stuff on hire, or when we were touring. And you can imagine that becomes really difficult over time, especially when you're doing a ton of dates. So we're doing like 30-odd dates on this tour. It would be almost impossible. So we kind of cheat now. We all use Axifexes. So at the front of stage, we've literally got 3 Ax8s, and that's our whole touring rig. So it's crazy. We fly in from Australia, and we're carrying, 4 guitars. That's 1 backup, and what we play. 3 little cases with our Axifexes, and a rack unit with our in-ear monitor rig, and that's it. We travel very light, and it's great when you're getting on and off the bus and all that kind of stuff too. So it's funny. It's almost like the search for tone has kind of led me down a more practical path. Like, how do I get the best out of the gear that I've got while still being mobile?
Yeah, sure. You don't have to carry around the whole studio.
But on the other hand, I mean, it's like technology like that, the digital side of amp profiling and stuff is incredible right now. I mean, it's to the point where an old salty amp purist is kind of fine with that gear now. So yeah, I love it, but nothing has changed my touring experience more than getting an Axifex and stopping lugging giant amps around everywhere.
And for the guitar part itself, what do you think is important about the guitar?
It's a fantastic question.
There's a lot of parts on it.
I don't think I've ever been asked that question. It's a really interesting one, because, I mean, obviously, like, especially with Adrian, my co-guitarist, we nerd out over this stuff for hours, but when it comes down to it, the thing that kind of matters more than anything else, I mean, assuming that the guitar's going to sound good and is going to look reasonable, is that the guitar can be pulled out of a case directly off the plane after traveling 15,000 kilometers or whatever. And it's not only not broken, it might still be in tune. You know what I mean? Yeah. So funnily enough,
not retuning 10,000 times.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, going from, say, Scandinavia to Spain or something, you've got such a significant difference in climate and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you need a guitar that can just, it's built like it can withstand an atomic winter. It's basically the number one consideration, I think. And of course, it has to sound good and look good as well.
Yeah, sure. So, are you going on a search every now and then? Is there like, there's new
I'm always tempted.
new stuff?
Of course, I'm always tempted. But
Like pick up, sorry.
yeah, no, exactly. But I've been playing Music Man guitars for, let me think, since 2013. So I guess 5 years now. It's actually quite a long time now I think about it. And I've been endorsed by them for that time. And it's funny that the John Petrucci model, which is what I play, is this guitar that is kind of, especially when it came out, like no other, in that it's kind of a nice looking guitar that doesn't look particularly metal. You know, I always had this problem with, like the really kind of overtly metal, you know, you can imagine a guy wearing a Slayer shirt and long hair, and I'm not into that. We're a sensitive prog band, you know, so it was the first 7-string that I found that really didn't have that kind of air about it. It was something that was a little bit more maybe artistic and, you know, and so forth. So anyway, I got that guitar back in 2013, and I haven't really looked back since. Although, you know, I play everyone on tour's instruments and kind of, you know, experiment around. It still comes out the best as far as I'm concerned.
So you've had the album last year, and you had also the pleasure to play also with Opus.
Yeah, incredible, yeah. Absolute dream come true, actually. In fact, that last European tour was kind of a treat, because we've now toured, well, almost every year. So our first Euro tour was in 2015, and it was kind of a smaller tour with a band from Norway called Shining. But what we hadn't really experienced yet was more of a relaxed tour like we saw last year. It's like we're playing with these really big bands like Opeth and Pain of Salvation and so forth. So we're just rocking up to venues, and, you know, catering's amazing. Like there's none of the stress of getting back on the bus and, you know, doing your best to find food and all that kind of stuff. This year's a bit different because, of course, we're headlining, so, you know, we're working a little bit harder and so forth. But yeah, I mean, just playing with Opeth was an adolescent dream. They've probably been my favourite band since I'm maybe 14 or 15.
They're amazing.
I adore them, and, you know, just hanging out with those guys, seeing them play every night, it was just incredible. Yeah.
So what are your further plans?
Well, I mean, obviously this tour is, you know, a big chunk of the time coming up, and I mean, this tour is an interesting one because it's kind of it's a bit of an experiment. You know, we did a couple of headline shows last year. Like we did a small headline show in London that we sold out, and one other one in the UK in Southampton. But this is the first time that we get to really see if we can kind of do the headline thing in Europe. It's looking really good ticket sale wise, and, you know, what we've seen so far, the reception has been really positive. But yeah, that's the thing that's exciting me the most. I mean, after that, we're looking at hitting the US next year, which will be the first time we've done that. We've got to start working towards another album, although that's still kind of on the horizon. It's still embryonic at this stage. But that's really it. Like me personally, I'm trying to finish a PhD that I've been working on for 3.5 years, so that's due in March. That's about it. My mind is usually just overwhelmed with those things.
Right.
So yeah.
So that's what you're doing on the tour bus.
Yeah, pretty well. It's funny. The other guys are off having their shots and enjoying their life. I'm on my little laptop typing, quietly in the back with noise cancelling headphones. So
Yeah.
It's a bit lame, but it's what I do. So.
No, it's important, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, what do you think about prizes you win and album charts? And I mean, you've been enjoying some of that.
Yeah,
obviously.
We have, yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, that's one of those things that could kind of consume you if you let it. You know, I mean, we have always had the outlook in Caligula's Horse that we're doing it for us first. I think that's a really. I know it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but I think it's something that's really kind of necessary, because this is the way I describe it. If you're a pop songwriter, right, and you write a song that's intended to chart, and it doesn't chart, it's a failure, right? Whereas if we write a prog song that is some crazy 16-minute, work of nonsense, and it doesn't chart, we don't really care, because that's not the intention. It's really more about, us enjoying it, us becoming excited about the art that we're creating. So I'm not saying that it doesn't matter to us. It's obviously super exciting when stuff does chart, or, as we see numbers increase over the years as we tour, or, even just like streaming numbers or YouTube numbers and things like that increasing. That gets us excited, but it's never been the motivation. The motivation is always just, if it's something that we truly believe in, our fans will probably get it. We think they will. They usually do. They have so far.
Yeah, I think so.
Far. But at the end of the day, it's like if something that we truly believe in doesn't succeed in a commercial sense, we still know that it represents us. It's still something that we're proud of. So, yeah, a little bit of both, I guess, is the short answer. Yeah.
What would you say defines somebody as an artist? What is this
Great question.
thing?
It's funny, I get stuck into like the kind of academic side of it, being that that's actually something that I spend a bit of time on in my PhD as well. But when I think of an artist, I'm thinking of someone who's kind of engaging with forms that are outside of maybe the scene or the musical style within which they exist. So for us, it's like we've got a music that is kind of defined by heaviness, light and shade, a bunch of other qualities, but we're always kind of looking for something else. And that something could be musical, it could be paramusical, like it could be different lyrics or different concepts. But what kind of excites us, and certainly what I see as an artistic quality or something to strive for in an artistic sense, is to find things that are a little bit unique, a little bit strange, and I find that that's what stimulates me the most. So it's a very subjective answer. I think that's kind of what I would see as being artistic as a quality. But yeah, I think it's just all about striving for something that is a little bit different. It doesn't need to be a reinvention of the wheel necessarily. It's just something that is kind of stimulating and exciting in that sense. Yeah.
So you would say you're an artist, right?
Yeah, I guess so. It sounds kind of conceited when you say it like that.
No,
Sure.
because there's sometimes people. I mean, I think you're an artist.
Thank you.
But there's people who say I can't say of myself I'm an artist because it has that connotation of
pretension,
you have to
doesn't
have
it? Yeah. No, well, it can sound very pretentious, and I mean that's why it's kind of. That's why I'm trying to kind of disentangle it, I suppose, from the idea of it being this lofty, pretentious thing. I mean, it's actually a very humble thing to be. I mean, especially if you're doing it for yourself, right? So, I mean, if you're someone who would identify themselves as an artist, and being an artist in a sort of subjective sense means that you're someone who is just trying to push their own limits or express themselves. That's a fairly humble task. Anyone can do that, right? I mean, certain people might do it and it might stimulate more people and it might have a greater, sort of commercial or critical impact. But at the end of the day, if you're impressing yourself, then that's great, right? So it's all about expressivity, I think, in that sense. And yeah, I mean, I'd say that I am an artist. I guess I think of myself as someone who functions in the artistic sphere, but as I say it, I sound like I'm really pretentious, so I apologize.
No. You don't. So thank you very much for the interview and also for sharing with the PhD.
My pleasure.
All the time. Thank you. All the best. Thank you. Bye.